Let's talk about tryouts. First question. What was the first question that I had?
Uh,
Oh
Contacting.
yeah. So we talked about getting like three, anywhere from like 1 to 3 private sessions just before tryouts. And Louis, you mentioned it could be that just to get back in the rhythm, or just to kind of go over the same, whatever, whichever technique that you're really good at, but just to go over it maybe a few more times and just get that confidence up. But me and Phil kind of said that if you're looking at it or you're approaching those private sessions as trying to make improvements on what you don't have to get into like a better team or a stronger team, I think you're approaching it wrong.
Uh, yeah, hearing Louis talk, I think I might have come at it from a cynical perspective right away. Like someone's contacting you because it's last ditch, and they're trying to make really impactful gains in a short period of time because it's for less than wholesome reasons. And maybe wholesome's not the right word. Like they're trying to make a team, they're trying to stay into a team. They're cynically training.
Yeah.
I'm training despite somebody. Like training for yourself. It's your journey. So hearing kind of Louis talk about the context of someone, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lou, about trying to get reps with your favorite coach to get maybe some confidence in before a tryout, ball striking. It's maybe some to knock some rust off if you're, looking to play your best, and if it's with someone that you really respect and have an outstanding relationship with, it could be really helpful. So I recant my first answer.
And, to be fair, everything we talk about for the most part is subjective. So, if contextually we can kind of tease out what is it exactly that we're describing, that it makes it easier for someone to apply it. So, to your point, if someone's trying to make these massive leaps and working on their weak foot, it's not going to happen
Yeah.
in
Two
three
days. Yeah.
sessions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's just trying to get a couple reps in and unpack whatever emotions you might have about the tryout, and you do have a coach you respect and that kind of helps you with your confidence. I think again, everything is just a tool for development, just
Yeah.
how you use it.
What do you think about like youth clubs charging players to come to tryouts?
They do that.
Yeah,
Is that
out here, yeah, yeah, I've seen them.
is that
It's
person
like
in the room with us now?
no, $50. I think it's like $50 to register to come out and try out.
That sounds like extortion.
Yeah, and we're talking like 9, 10 year olds. How wild is that?
What? This is maybe going to take me down a rabbit hole. So stop me after you answer just factually. What is the average cost for club soccer in Colorado? Do you know what most clubs are asking
I
for
don't know.
a
It obviously depending on the level. Obviously, if you play ECNL and stuff, I'm assuming anyone can. I think just to join the club, it's about just over 2 grand. But then ECNL, if you play that, you got out of state games and tournaments
Yeah,
where that can be easily $1,000 per trip, really.
yeah.
So I think you're looking anywhere from like 4 to 7 grand.
Okay, now let's get back on track.
Yeah,
Um, are you?
What's the $50 covering?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What are they going to get for this? That was my
I
next
don't know.
question.
I don't know, but they're collecting money. I'm telling you, it's
15
true.
bucks.
Yeah, they're collecting money. I've seen that. I'm gonna look it up right now.
Registration fee. You have to secure your spot in tryouts. Is that because they have so many players out there that they're trying to avoid having a log jam of kids on one or two fields? Like,
Yeah,
maybe I have
I don't
questions.
know. You're asking the wrong person, but obviously we think it's weird, wrong. I don't know. What do you think?
Wrong and weird,
Yeah, yeah,
both.
I agree. Let me see.
Louis, did we ever? Uh, we gave out shirts at Campton for tryouts, right? And that we didn't charge anyone. We never charged anybody.
No, not for tryouts. or even the T-shirts. We got a sponsor,
Yeah.
so it didn't come out of the club's pockets.
How much would those sponsors would have to pay to make the shirts?
They were basic cotton T-shirt, $10 with
Yeah,
inflation, $12. Then the screen print front and back, another.
$18 an hour with the tariff.
Yeah. So back then, $20 a shirt, maybe less, 15.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's wild.
Okay. Well, that's the
Can I
youth setup. Hang on.
ask
What
another
go?
question? Evaluations? Do they get assessment like written feedback or verbal feedback from staff at this event?
I don't know that, but I think they get some sort of feedback. They get some sort of feedback. I think. How about how long do you think a tryout should be?
Uh,
One session, two sessions, three, four. Should I keep going? Should keep counting?
yeah, 100%. They're youth
I
players.
think it's tough. I mean, after one session,
Yeah,
you
because
have
you
a
could
good.
have a nightmare.
You could, yep. I think for sure too. But then after that, if there's still questions on either side from the player or from the coaches, like keep inviting them out, get them
Yeah,
comfortable with the environment, with the coach, see if they settle in a little bit.
yeah,
It, I think you look at it like a trial. They're they're also experiencing your environment, what you're like as a coach, or your club looks like, how you're perceived, and so they
yeah.
opt the eye test, as well as the firsthand experience of what it's like to be in the learning environment that you and
Hmm.
your organization create. Tryouts are a special time and they're really stressful. So it's also a chance for players to see how we deal with the stress of difficult conversations and interacting with new faces, and how we deal and treat our current players, just as much as it is to see what the level of the current team that they're walking into, might look like for them. And so there's a lot at stake. I think the the challenge is to be as welcoming as possible, and if you can afford to do it from the calendar perspective, they should be out there for like a week or two and try.
I agree. At least a whole week of training sessions.
Yeah, well, it's hard
Um,
because everyone has tryouts. They hold them at the same time, so it's
yeah,
competition not just for players, it's
yeah,
competition for
yeah.
time in the week.
But what about so you come to the tryout, not tryout. So you come to the tryout. What's the format should be? What should the format be? As in, should they just come to the tryout and get straight into the game, or should they have like a training session? What do you think is the most effective way to evaluate a player?
What age group?
Let's say we're talking 13-year-olds. U10 to U13.
Lou, you want to go?
Um, so first, let me pull the layers back and start with U7, U8.
Okay.
All right, and for the most part, these are all fairly new players to organized soccer. They may have done recreational, and now mom or dad are like, okay, they like it. I'm willing to commit time and resources into a more structured club. Right, no more volunteers. Now it's professional coaches that have their licensure, and so as I mentioned, earlier in a previous episode, we're as a club we're trying out for the parents and showing them what we could offer. And so for those age groups, I'd say a model session where
Yeah.
parents can kind of see what would a typical session look like. And it's going to be watered down, obviously, because you don't know the players if they're all fairly new. But in the very least, parents can see the types of activities and also what is the attention span of their player
Yeah.
in that environment. right? So it's not just the soccer aspect. I think it's also how ready are they for, if you want to call it the next step in
Yeah,
their trajectory.
yeah, that's a good point. I think
Yeah,
I think it goes the same with actually like adult players as well, because sometimes you can tell somebody who trains well but doesn't exactly perform in the game, right? You got some of those players as well, and then somebody who don't perform well in the training ground, but when the game time comes, they perform really well, right? I think yeah, it can be applicable that way as well.
And for older players, if you mentioned U13,
Yeah,
so that's 11v11.
yep,
If it's all fairly new players and they're not getting on the ball, you might miss an opportunity from signing a player that can impact the game, but they just never got on it
yeah,
for whatever reason. So maybe doing something before the 11v11 game allows for a coach to evaluate technique,
yeah,
whether it can be a passing pattern or dribbling exercise
yeah,
or small-sided possession, whatever it might be, to reduce the numbers to allow for more interactions with the ball. And then we get to 11v11, and that's another aspect that we can evaluate the player.
good points. Well, you've done this one. You've done this one more than me and Phil. How about when it comes to as a grown man trying to get a contract? You go on trials and you're trying to get a contract. How do you approach that as a player? How do you prepare yourself to get the best outcome? How did you do it? A lot of times people will say just be you, but again, what does that even mean, right? So how did you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was a central midfielder, and I played lower leagues in Sweden, and I tried out in Germany, lower leagues as well. And so my takeaway was you you don't have anything to lose, but everything to gain, right? So showcase as much of your impactful characteristics that you can bring to their environment without the fear of failure. Because the moment you want to play tentative is the moment that you shy away from showcasing what you have to bring, right? And you start playing safe, and they don't want safe players because they're everywhere. And if you're
Yeah.
a foreigner, you're taking the spot of a domestic player, right? So they want to make sure that if they're signing you, it's because you're going to impact their
Yeah. Yeah.
competitive environment. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say you've got 2 days to impress, and the first day you've done really well, and second day comes and somehow everything just feels flat. No one's really standing out, and but you're the same. You're playing to their level, everyone's level, and you're not playing well. How do you get back into that rhythm of how? Yeah, how would you approach that? How do you get back into the game?
it's like hitting the reset button. Essentially, you
Yeah.
have this optimal flow state. Frank, you and I talked about it, and I think in a previous call, just that individual zone of optimal functioning when nothing else matters. You've stripped everything away. It's just you, the ball, your teammates, the opponents. You don't even pay attention to the ref. It's like driving to the training pitch. You'll go to a
Yeah.
stop sign and go through the four-way intersection, and then a mile on the road, you'll forget and ask yourself, did I stop at that stop sign, or did I stop at that red light? Because you're in this optimal functioning state. You've done it so many times that when you strip all the distractions away from what's at the core of your peak performance, it is just identifying why we play the game. We love
Yeah.
to do what we do. We enjoy it. We like being around our mates. We're good at what we do. We belong on the field. So like just kind of some self-affirmation is a great way to just hit reset and
Yeah.
get back to the mindset you had at the beginning of the game or before that little setback or the
So like strip away, keep it simple, simplify,
yeah.
build it from there.
Well, you also have to be your own advocate. You can't be an
Yeah.
adversary in your own performance. Everyone's telling you, heckling you, and there's fans in the stands. Everyone's booing your touch when you're away from
Yeah.
home. And so the challenge is you got to hold it together, man. You got to be good to yourself. You got to be kind to yourself. Yeah. So
Any funny trial stories you had?
I didn't hear that. I think you cut out, buddy.
Any funny tryout stories do you have, even as a player or as a coach?
Well, when I went to my first tryout as a kid from my small little farm town club to a bigger city, my dad didn't know the year that I was born, apparently. So calling the kids out, and they were like, 1979s and 1980s and 1981s. My dad was like, "Go on." They said 1980s, and so I run out there, and these kids were mammoths. They were just they had leg hair and like as a little 11-year-old. And the kids were like, "I think you're in the wrong spot." So I ran you had to do fitness tests back in the day.
Yeah.
You run 40-yard dash, and they blew my doors off, man. I couldn't even keep up. Their body was,
Yeah,
you know, far more
a
developed.
foot longer.
So I participated with these older kids for like 30 minutes, and then realized that someone caught me and pushed me back to the 81s. And I don't think I had a good tryout. I don't know what happened after that. That was my memorable takeaway. My dad didn't know what year I was born.
Yeah. Did you get on the
That.
team or not?
No, I did not make that team. 80s or 81. That's the only one that stands out at the top of my head right now.
Nothing, Louis?
I mean, I remember waking up late for high school tryouts and having to run the Cooper to 2 miles in under 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And I arrived late, so I just drove straight to the track. No breakfast, nothing.
Yeah.
Laced them up and killed it.
Straight away. Did you come under 12?
Yeah.
If you were to run 2 miles right now, what do you think you can get fastest,
Oof.
realistically?
It's 90 seconds a lap, 8 laps at under a minute and a half each lap. That's brutal.
Yeah.
I only was able to do it twice, and there's no way I could capture that form again.
No, dude, I don't have the mental strength anymore. beyond the physical capabilities, the mental strength to want to endure that, I don't have it. So it's safe to say 30 minutes because I'd walk it.
I'd need one of those like Powerade tables to grab some water for a cup that's in my hands and I'm going by.
But I think we could segue into how do we feel about fitness tests for tryouts as a way to weed out which players aren't physically prepared.
I can support this topic just in the time that I had at the local high school here for the year. And fitness tests were a big component of player selection.
Yeah.
And it wasn't well organized or well stated how the metrics were going to be used. To my point, you could use those metrics to create like a player profile of what a varsity level player to look like. They hit in these ranges for these various tests that we do. There's not one test to determine soccer fitness. There's a myriad of tests that determine your fitness, right? And some of it's mental toughness, and some of it's that battle too. So all of those things should be wrapped into, if you want to make varsity, you need to score, or we typically score in these ranges. And you need to do technical testing too. Let's be honest, like passes off a wall, driven passes into a target area, crossing the ball into the box, finishing. You can put some metrics on some of your individual performances. So if you do it correctly, I'm sure it works out great. However, this is not done correctly, and at any given time, those scores can be held against you. You didn't run the Cooper test on time, so I'm not going to pick you for this week. And so like it was more exclusionary than it was inclusionary.
Yeah.
It's, if you give kids a goal, I want to make varsity, so here's full transparency how your best route to get varsity playing time looks like. These things. Instead, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded. You have no idea how to get into the team. You're like, what do I need to do today to impress the coach? Does it run my fitness test? Does it show up early? Does it stay late? The goalposts move so many times that, like I said, it was more exclusionary. How to keep kids out of your team because they have too many players, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've just seen it not work very well.
How about when it comes to tryouts and speaking of excluding players, judging, like writing off players immediately as soon as they turn up based on their looks
Are the shin guards over top the socks?
and the ankle guards?
I'll take the stirrups, man. Some people.
Or how about overweight? You're fat.
That's a loaded question, Frank.
I think it depends on the organization. So if you have a competitive environment for an individual where there's other similar level players and like-minded players, and again, relatively it could be a very low-level team. But if everyone kind of fits in and parents are willing to, pay for that club's services, then why not? But if there's a player that is just so far from everybody else that you'd be doing them a disservice by placing them on a team, as well as their potential teammates, that's when you have to have a difficult conversation with parent and turn them away. Say, hey, we may
Yeah.
not be the club for you, and that's okay.
Yeah. So if the player comes and he's clearly overweight, I'm just gonna stick with that. Do you have that conversation to the family that he or she's overweight?
Well, I think there's some tact involved with this. You have to certainly be graceful in how you deliver the information to the family. Delivering difficult news or having
Yeah.
hard conversations, it's part of our job. And Louis'
Yeah.
point is about context. If I've coached in Parks and Rec, I've done more than my fair share of volunteer work in those kind of districts where fun is at the
core. Yeah.
part of what you're doing, the core
Yeah.
of what you're. So there's room for everyone to play the game.
Yeah.
It's just to at what level and what experience are they trying to get out of it. If at face value, you can never judge a book by its cover. Every kid does get a chance or should have an opportunity to go out and experience the session with you. If obviously they're not the right fit, the earlier you can give that information, I think it's
Yeah.
better. And so whether you're maybe just pulling the kid out after 20 minutes and saying this isn't going to work here, let's walk to your mom and dad. But you do have to be really kind and deliver the information in a way that doesn't make the player feel like they can't enjoy the sport at the level that's right for them. So I say that to say this: the 4 pillars of the game include the physical requirements of endurance and strength and stamina and speed and quickness. You do have to have a robust physical profile to be successful at the level that you might be coaching at. So you do have to say no thanks. This isn't the right fit.
Yeah.
We're a northbound train. This is where we depart.
And his is east and west.
I'll help you find another direction to go in. I have other contacts in these clubs, and this might be a good fit. And so you might help pass that name along to someone else that's looking for supplemental players. But you do have to learn to say no.
Yeah.
And be a professional about how you do it.
Yeah. I think you mentioned if these players showing up are passing the eye test.
Yeah.
I think regardless, you allow them to try out to compete. And then at that, everyone gets a fair chance, and then afterwards, it could be their physical profile, it could be their lack of technique, or it could be their lack of attention span if they're on the younger side. But it's important for the evaluators to know what those metrics are, because again, it is subjective. Even from coach to coach at the club, it is subjective. And so being able to know why a certain player, yes, we want to sign them, and why not, is important.
Yeah.
And that's where, open dialogue between coaches should happen, whether it's on the field or afterwards when we step into the war room to rank players. And somebody wants to advocate for a specific player because they might see something in them that you might miss, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think Louis brings up a valid point. We've probably all been surprised at some point too about a player that comes out, it doesn't look the part, but has an exceptional understanding, maybe tactically, or maybe hasn't played super organized soccer up to that point, but has been in the backyard and the cultural environment at family level or with friends is great. That's why I like
Hmm.
Chicagoland, because there's so many cultural influences. Players that uh, appear out of nowhere like a diamond in the rough, or
Yeah.
could be very deceiving how they look optically to you. And so we make these dispersions. We have these implicit biases that could come to the forefront during the player selection process that immediately has a negative deterrent on your player selection. You can't judge a book by its cover
Yeah.
without giving ample opportunity to have a bad session, to maybe need an little extra gear here or there to look like an academy youth player. Uh, who are we to stop them from that
Yeah.
experience?
Speaking of getting sidetracked here, but speaking of judging a player based on the looks, game day. What's like the worst? Worst as in, oh, that player must be good. What's that look? How does that player turn up to the field?
Uh,
Because for me, I'll give you an example. Because for me, it's like players just turning up wearing just wearing slides, two fingers holding up the cleats, just dragging along, and then they put their boots on, start pinging balls. You're like, yeah, he's gonna be class.
that's on the girls' side now. That is my like, oh dear, here we go.
Yeah,
There's someone that is really fast,
yeah,
or there's a girl in the opposition that can strike a ball with her laces. And then I'm like, oh, we're in trouble. She's going to shoot from 30 yards, and
and it's just gonna go over.
we got to block a lot of shots really
Yeah,
fast.
yeah,
You know, I tell the players, how do you want to be perceived
yeah,
by the opponent? Can you win the mental battle during the warm ups? Right. So when they look over and we're, locked in, what are they going to be thinking? And so, to Phil's point, if you're working with girls and you see nobody has to tell them to tie their shoes and get up and get
yeah,
moving, and they do it on their own without a coach even being there to be, um, watching over them.
yeah,
You're like, okay, they're accountable, and then they start pinging it or what have you.
yeah.
Uh, so I think it's just, how do you want to be perceived?
I'll give you another look. Um, like warming up, well, before the warm up, players on the pitch just pinging balls, but they got their shin pads in their hand, and then obviously I think it's like you have that like beginner look where you're wearing the full kit right from like before the warm up, whereas like good players just don't put them on, right?
You're saying when your kids get there, they walk through the parking lot and their cleats are scuffing on the pavement. They're like,
Yeah,
their
hate
cleats
that.
in concrete.
Yeah,
They're $200 cleats.
yeah,
I'm like,
I can't stop to hear that sound. I got my start coaching in my hometown, essentially. And so anytime we would go to the northwest side of Columbus, you play against the more affluent areas. And this kids always had nicer gear, cooler jerseys. We wore Mitre, they wore Nike. We upgraded to Umbro, and they were like Lotto. Lotto back
yeah,
then was
yeah. Or Kappa.
miter.
Mitre. You know, there's just something to be said um, for playing against or with like the established order.
Yeah,
That uh, I always had this underdog mentality because of that, and I always strived harder to kick those kids in the teeth. I never wanted them to have any success. It like spurred me
yeah,
to play harder and better. I was never intimidated by kids that had more than I did. I think my parents did a good job raising me to provide what I needed, and they didn't give me what I wanted. I had to go out and get what I wanted, whether it was using my allowance, working around the house for extra chore money, saving money to go buy things that I needed. I
yeah,
still have all the money I spent on my youth and drum equipment downstairs. I had to buy all of that. I had to work when I was young. I think that instills the blue collar mentality required to really play the sport at the high
Yeah.
level. Not a,
So
it's
Phil,
not a,
you're a buffalo, not a gazelle.
I Buffalo seems like they're still agile for me right now, man. With the knee I got, like a
You know,
one-legged goose.
we're talking about tryouts, right? And
Oh,
so
sorry.
no, what I'm getting at it is we're talking about tryouts and how you want to be perceived, knowing that you're being evaluated, and so you want to give your best chance to be successful.
Yeah.
So you show up with your gear, however it might be, uh, but you're taking accountability for it. You're carrying your bag, your soccer ball, water bottle. Uh, you might approach the coaches and say, "Hi, I'm so and so," kind of depending on how old you are. Like
Yeah.
all those little things
Yeah.
start to add up, and then you might be a quality player. And so a coach might say, "Hey, this guy walked up and uh, he had all his stuff sorted on his own. He got himself going, and then he started playing, and he's got some quality. I'm a fan of his." While another coach might be like, "I saw him play. I'm not a fan," but he's not taking into account everything else that
Yeah.
the initial coach was watching. And so again, you never know who's watching
Yeah.
and what they're watching for.
We call that being parched, right? So you're always thirsty, so you go and get your water, but as you're drinking your water, you're standing next to the coach and listening to what he's saying and just giving your opinion and all that sort of stuff. It's like obviously that happens a lot in your working environment as well, like in the corporate settings, like trying to, do one of these two bosses, right? And all of those things, just try and make yourself look good. But I think tryouts is the same. You turn up and say hello to the coach and just get your name out there and just make your like first impressions, make like eye contact and just get to know the person first, and then it's gonna be so much easier for the coach to remember who you are, and then it's like human nature. You always gonna be in their eyes.
Yeah, I mean that does seem to ring true. You have these sheets when kids come out, and you got to take notes on everyone.
Yeah,
A lot of times you do use quick first impression notes to remember new faces. It's not like you're going around with a camera and snapping photos of their faces. You have to remember this kid's got blue boots or yellow
yeah,
socks. The kid had a firm handshake. He looked me in the eye. First year was juggling. He was assertive in the session. He asked questions if he was confused. What type of kind of learning personality styles do they have? And so there's a lot of things that go into setting a good tone, a good first impression for a player on trial.
yeah,
Biggest one is just dedication and commitment. You know, the biggest ability you have is availability.
yeah,
So, you have to be there. You have to turn up on time, and you've got to have the ability to work hard under about as many situations, conditions as possible.
yeah,
Just never say die attitude.
yeah. Do you think there's hardest position for a player to try out? Do you think there's?
Let's go in reverse order. Goalkeeper, easiest.
You think so?
Yeah, there's not enough goalkeepers. One,
Sure.
two. Anytime goalkeepers show up, every coach is salivating. They're like, "Oh, we got to go."
Yeah.
You could go out with two gloves on opposite hands, and you could make a team.
Yeah.
There's not enough of them, and because of that, there's not enough competition. So no one's goalkeeper is ever really good.
Yeah.
You have one goalkeeper per team. You need at least two.
Yeah.
It's a very nuanced, specific position, so they need constant development and nurturing of the technique. Not even the tactics, the technique. The
Is there any
specificity.
other? What do you think the hardest is?
Like hardest position or just
Yeah.
hardest position?
Well, yeah. I mean, the hardest position for you to come try out. Is there one?
10.
Or center striker. I mean,
I was gonna say, yeah,
if you're at the mercy of your team, getting you the ball, and they can't leave their defensive third.
yeah,
You're isolated. So even maybe a winger again for 11v11. You find yourself on the far side, and all the action is away from
the
you.
other side, yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, 7-11 might be it.
yeah. I was gonna say the 9. Yeah, because oftentimes if you're a lot of teams will try and play 4-3-3, and especially as a lone striker, if you're not getting that sort of support, all you do is just like try to do your best to hold on to the ball. Yeah, that'd be a tough one, I think.
Let me ask you a supplemental question, an
Go on
addendum
then.
question. When kids come out to try, what's the most common position they tell you that they play?
9, 7, 11.
7, 11, and 6, 8, or 10. They always say, I play center mid. Well, which one?
Yeah, yeah,
Different, you know.
yeah.
Which one? 8 or 10.
You know
Vivian,
you know what's interesting though. I know that's the direction of soccer that the world is in, but I was listening to Stick to Football and Sean Dyche, who was managing most recently Everton, and he was talking about like what is going on with all these numbers. You know, we got 6, 8, 10. You know, back when we were playing, it's just if you're a midfielder. You go up and try and score when we're attacking. You come back down and try and defend so no one can score. You do both. Now everyone's got like a role, like defensive midfield or CDM or CAM. Like just do both.
why do you think that's way off topic? Why
Yeah.
do you think there's like these over organized positions that we find ourselves in? And is this an American problem or is this
No, I think it's a world problem. I think we start obviously like formations will come and go. It lives in full cycle. We went from like 4-4-2 to 4-3-3, and briefly we were at 3-5-2 when Louis van Gaal brought it back with the Netherlands team going to the semi-finals and all that, or final. But I think the one manager who really revolutionized it is obviously Pep Guardiola with his positional plays and very systemized approach to the game. Whereas before it was when we were playing 4-4-2, obviously with two midfielders, you go up, you go down.
are you blaming Pep for this conundrum? Like, I want the
Yeah,
world.
I guess I think you can say that. Yeah, I think you can say that because I think he has turned the game around in so many different directions where everyone wants to try and build up from the back. Everyone wants to play the way he plays, and even at the youth level, like
Do you blame Pep or do you blame the people that have distorted his tactical setup from year to year? Because his city teams have changed. You know, they don't always look to build out.
yeah,
They've done when they should to great
yeah,
effect. He's clearly the best coach in football.
yeah. But again, to yeah, I see what you're saying. But again, if you look at players like uh, midfielder Phil Foden, right?
Okay.
When he was playing in the Euros, he was awful. But people were saying, well, if you think about it, he's really good for Man City, but he's not good for England because obviously Southgate wasn't Guardiola, and Guardiola loves to coach his players to like very finest details, and Southgate isn't that. And Phil Foden only has played for one manager, which is Guardiola, who's they're saying he's the most overcoached player. So when he doesn't have those instructions and have the freedom to play, he struggles. I think, yeah, and then people look at it as a fan, as a coach, and they want to bring because it's a winning football at the maybe not this season, but he has won a lot, and everyone just wants to copy that, and it
Yeah,
becomes a positional play and just roles and specifics. Yeah,
my question, and I get off topic easily. You guys know me well enough. It has nothing to do with the youth game. What Pep
yeah,
does at City has very little bearing on what happens in our local grassroots youth clubs. None of us are Pep. If we were, we'd be in the
yeah,
touch line with
yeah, yeah,
the 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 task of a coach is knowing who's in front of you, the
yeah,
player needs of the team,
yeah,
the individuals. We might want to do this or that because we see it on TV, but those kids are 11 or 12 or 13 or 14, and we're watching full pros in their 20s that are adults. You know, they can make adult decisions, and the four pillars
yeah,
are concrete for them. You know, I think my my comment about people that have distorted that vision, I think, are misapplying the competencies of adults to what they expect kids to do. The kids don't play like professional adults. They just don't make way more mistakes, and we don't learn the same way. We need years and years and years to craft our skills, and those are really complex tactics. He gets countless hours per week with
yeah,
each of the players, you know, and so we don't have that time. We don't have the skill set to train. There's only one pep. There's only one city. And so the challenges we face, I think, are like the over rigorous, over structured team tactical setups we try. Kids don't need to know all of those things. They need to essentially where they should be in the two transitional moments. What do I do when my team's lost the ball? What do I do when my team wins the ball? Those are pretty foundational elements. And then how do I support my teammates to attack? Am I allowed to try to score, or do I cross it to teammates that are going to try to score instead? So that helps me determine if I'm central or wide. And then who am I defending against? What's the single individual player on the other team that I should take into account? How do I stop her from having success? Like simplify the way that the game is, I think, broken down for players, because otherwise it's over wordy and too much vocabulary, and teaching courses is dense material and these big fancy adult words, and kids don't understand any of that.
I think they're as players mature from U6, through U13 and beyond. There's certain principles that their understanding tactically of the game should be rooted in, where it doesn't change much. And so then as they get older to, let's say U18, now it's like that head coach is just trying to put the right pieces in place to get the result they want.
Yeah.
Because now the scale of winning to development is heavily on the winning side. There's going to be some development, but definitely the outcome is, how do we win? All right. And so when the kids are younger and you want to give them understanding of the game, it's like, what are those principles? And then what on the field are they looking for to make their decisions so they can be autonomous?
And you're talking about like cues and triggers, right? Like things in the environment to help them react on their own.
You're a possession style team. You want to build out of the back, right? And so keeper rolls it out to a center back, and that center back, what is their next action, and what is it based off of? And so as they carry the ball to attract pressure, what are the players off the ball doing? Are they adjusting their angle and distance of support?
Yeah.
Is the player on the ball looking to, skip a line of players and play a little bit higher? Or are they playing out wide, or, whatever it might be? Or are they just going to keep carrying it into space? And so then the players off the ball, what are they doing? And so as the ball is shifting different parts of the field, the players need to read the game, similar to how coaches recognize these patterns of play. But if for the players it's their first time learning it, they have less reps. So what is it specifically that we're looking for? Are we looking for numerical advantages? What part of the field? And if we are at a numerical disadvantage, should we continue to attack, or do we change directions and play backwards? We change the point of attack, right? And so you don't want to be telling a player when to dribble, when to pass, who to pass to, right? Because it takes the decision away from them.
Yeah, and this is something I watched yesterday. Actually, it's an old video clip when Jose Mourinho was coaching Spurs, and he said the session design should enforce or guide the players to make those decisions rather than telling players when to dribble, when to make the decision, when to pass. But rather, players continue to make their own decisions. And this is obviously at the top level, and they're still doing that. So the session designs are so important, I think.
And because each activity, how it's set up, the amount of players and what positions are involved, and where the ball starts, and are you attacking two mini goals, or are you attacking the full size goal? It all brings out different parts of the game, and the coach needs to be intentional with all those aspects.
Yeah.
In order to help their team.
Do you know Will Still, who was, I think he's only about 30, 31, but he was the manager who was coaching or managing a team, I think it was Lens or Len, in France. And that team was winning. So he somehow got the job because the manager got fired and he got the job because he was an assistant. And then he doesn't have a pro license, so the club had to continue to pay the fine every weekend they play. But they kept on winning, and I was like, screw it, which is worth it. Anyway, he moved on to a different club now, still managing in France. But he was on Monday Night Football. He was talking about his session designs to press high. So what he did was obviously full pitch 11v11. But one team's so the focus team will have the goal on the 18 and it's empty, no goalkeeper. So I guess 10v11. So the point is, as you play on the loss of the possession, on your transitions, you have to press high because other teams they'll get close to the goal and they'll just shoot. Yeah. So it was just about that guided discovery on finding their own triggers, and if that doesn't work, then we continue to guide them on, okay, well, here's the trigger, here's how we can approach it. So they continue to make those players continue to make those decisions on, okay, well, switch of the mentality, and then here's how we can approach. Very simple. Yeah.
You want those habits and tendencies to be brought out.
Yeah, just installed
in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they're not coming out organically during your team sessions Monday through Friday, then how can you have the expectation that you'll see them on the weekend?
Yeah, and this is Phil. This is something you said yesterday when we were talking on the phone. I mentioned soccer's boys are performing really well. They're beating like DC United 1-0 just recently. And then you mentioned their training sessions are just playing a lot.
They play a lot and everything goes to goal.
Yeah.
They always go to goal. So they have like this ruthless mentality. They just want to shoot. They'll shoot from every opportunity they can when they've got, numerical advantage, or when it's just a super confident kid. Like they just have a desire to attack and score more goals than the opponent. And so on the flip side, the girl side, we have a lot of work to do with that.
Yeah.
Our sessions don't bring out those same elements. They're small-sided. They're transfer boxes. They're, rondos. Well, possession has a purpose. And so our purpose has to be scoring goals, winning game.
Yeah. Another thing I watched was, this was from a podcast called High Performance. And I forget this guy's name, but he was talking about the way you practice, right? So obviously, if you practice here on the game days, you're not going to be performing there. And then at the peak, say you're playing like a cup final or something, you're not going to be performing at your peak every single time. There's no way. So if you're training there and if your peak is there, you're never going to be performing at that level. So it's just about the way you train every single day. And do you remember when Alex Ferguson was talking about, or do you watch the way my team trains? This is why we win games, because they are ruthless in training sessions. Yeah. It's just the way the team trains every single day. It just sets the culture of winning mentality, because you're never going to be performing at your peak every single time. So you got to train well beyond your peak performance. Just go out for that every single time. So when the game day comes, even if you underperform, you're still at the top level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think at the grassroots level,
yeah,
coaches have that understanding that you are a product of your habits.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think they walk into a training session with some intentionality, to maximize development? And then they get to the game on the weekend and they're frustrated.
Yeah.
Regardless of the result, they're frustrated that their kids aren't performing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the responsibility of, is that the coach or the players? And this, let's say it's 9v9, so U11, U12.
I think it's the coach, because I don't think you should be asking for things you haven't trained from the players, no matter what the level is. If you haven't prepared for it, yeah.
It's not necessarily this or that. It can be this and that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because we don't always prepare our players for the obstacle ahead of us. the opponent always tells us where we're the weakest.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a great week of training based on the objectives you defined. The opponent's going to exploit you in areas that maybe you didn't prepare for, and so you have this give and take where you might be frustrated after a given game because player development is so long term. We're not always in the learning how to win stage.
Yeah.
We're learning how to train or learning how to compete stage, and so our ideals and the club curriculum and your training plans, sometimes those come at odds to what the game is asking of your players. And so to get frustrated is human. We get frustrated by things we don't understand or we're not doing well. And so I think it's a kind of a two-way street. I always feel maybe more empathy with my players when there's a level of frustration because I take it so personally that maybe they're frustrated.
Yeah.
I want them to succeed. We work really hard. We're on the field together for all those hours. And then when the game rolls around, when they're in front of their peers and they're not playing well, I take that as a sign that maybe I didn't do enough to help get them ready for that most important day of the week for them.
So should coaches manage their own expectations better so then game day, yes, you can be frustrated with what you're seeing, but you don't have to unload that frustration on the player or the
Yeah.
referee or your
Mm-hmm.
clipboard or what
Yeah.
have you, other than, all right, I can't solve it today. I could identify it, maybe regroup during halftime, figure this and that, but we're at where we're at. Now
Yeah.
we just go back to the drawing board and, however you periodize your curriculum, you can implement a little bit of what you saw over the weekend, but you don't change course. You just continue on, what is your club's methodology, right? Because to be reactive, it's the idea of chasing two rabbits and catching neither.
Yeah.
If during Monday through Friday you focused on this, and then on the weekend the game happens, and you're like, huh. And then the following week you're like, I need to work on those deficiencies, and then the
Yeah.
following game you're like, you find a completely different set of deficiencies.
Yeah.
So it's very reactive versus, well, what is your plan, and then how do you slowly sprinkle in some of the
Yeah.
things you saw.
Yeah, I think especially on the game days, as a coach, your focus should be what you have worked on, like is in the talking points right before the game starts. In terms of what we want to see, I think it should be what you have worked on throughout the week, and the halftime should be you just pick one topic. Hopefully, that's related to what you have done throughout the week, and then you have maybe a subtopic. But I don't think it should be anything more than, especially at the youth level, like anywhere from like U7 to like U13, 14. I don't think it should be anything more than 2-3 topics, just trying to hammer everything down. Just pick one and go with it. How do we improve on that? The reminder.
Man, if someone had the grand solution for this, if this was like set in stone, I think it changes every single year you're with a team. Every team, every set of players has different problems at different stages.
Mm-hmm.
So you as the coach have to have your kind of finger on the pulse of not just the team, but what are developmentally appropriate benchmarks for them to be capable of doing.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get way down the rabbit hole of doing these 10 things when they're just not ready for them. Set pieces,
Right.
We're not set pieces yet. We're going to do throw-ins. Yeah. That happens all the time. We're going to do some goal kicks, but we're not doing indirects and attacking, corner kick plays. We're not going to get too elaborate. We're going to focus on my relationship with the ball because we're getting shelled by the other team. We're going to take a lot of goal kicks. We're going to get better at those. I'm going to teach some defending topics. I'm going to teach my team maybe how to have a back four or a back three. So you have to sprinkle in these holistic elements with, at the same point in time, ways in which you can maybe help your team improve their performance. And defending is one of the easier phases of the game because it's about effort and attitude. And so if you layer it right across the season, you can help build some optimal performance. You have to pick your battles and know when to get caught up on this versus that.
If I'm hearing you, it's what are the immediate problems that your players are coming up against? How can you solve them and prioritize those, but also with the end in sight of, but what am I building towards?
Right. It's
And
like
so, because
long term, you know.
if it is
Hmm.
long term, right, then you're like, I'm not going to focus on long balls because they're 5v5, they can't kick it that far.
Yeah.
Right.
So technically, I'm not going to focus on bringing balls out of the air. So there's no need to waste time with that.
Yeah.
But 5v5, it's like they need to know how to run with the ball, so I'm gonna spend some time there because my kids can't run using their favorite
Yeah.
foot fluidly. They need to be able to change directions, and do they need to learn how to pass? Maybe some 5v5 teams are, others probably are not. So maybe you don't focus a lot of your session on passing and receiving because you're still prioritizing other technical components that are probably more of a priority.
Yeah.
And as they master those, and you're like, all right, I'm going to start sprinkling in a little passing, receiving, a little
Hmm.
receiving across your body, right? You're not going to start with receiving across your body if they can't receive
At
the
all?
ball coming towards them.
Yeah.
All right. But then you're like, but I know that at some point they're going to have to do that. So
Yeah.
let me focus on this, and then I'll start layer in what I need to, so then get to that point. And ultimately, like, I think we just don't do, we as the youth coaches, enough of the back end work to organize our training sessions and our thoughts.
Yeah.
So then we could build off of them weekly,
Yeah.
monthly.
So I think so. I mean, everything we're saying is basically trying to keep things soccer age and physical age appropriate, right? Because what I did notice from like well before as well is a lot of the coaches will go on YouTube and search for all these exercises, but that are done by professionals.
Right.
It's just wrong designs for your players. And
And
you go to the training ground and it doesn't work out. And you're like, why can't you do it? Yeah.
on top of that, we end up stacking so many sessions on top of each other so quickly that if we don't go back to the activities we've consistently focused on,
Hmm.
players are in a constant state of trying to learn a new exercise,
Yeah.
learning to play the game. They're learning a new exercise with these complicated ways of scoring and player rotations. And if there's three teams, that's a whole different set of issues. And so players, if they're constantly trying to learn something new,
Yeah.
it takes away from the learning environment. You know,
Hmm.
we talked about it earlier about making games directional to goals, making it realistic. That's really great. You don't need 50 activities across the season. You need 36. Mourinho uses 36. Same activity, maybe some variations, but
Hmm.
you're not going to overcomplicate things. You're actually going to make it easy. So when the players walk in, to Louis' point, they feel autonomous. I know what's coming up. I know this activity by name. We've done it before. But coach always has a little wrinkle to kind of bring
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
this behavior or that desired behavior. And so, you know, as a player, you want that relatedness and the competency in the group that you can make your own decisions. I'm working towards ball mastery, and my teammates are there along the journey with me. It's called self-determination theory. If you can align those three things together, players really take on ownership of their development pathway to the degree that training then takes on a life of its own. They're there for themselves. They know what you're going to do. You're not throwing curveballs at them. You're not playing these complicated games that don't make any sense. It we defeat ourselves when we try to pull all these activities off the internet and we want to try this and we're going to try something new today. Don't do anything new. Do what
Yeah.
you've been doing.
Yeah.
Stick to what works.
All right. Well, if you were to give one advice, nice and short, one advice to players who are going out for a tryout today, what would you say? What would you tell him or her? Go on.
Have fun. Have fun.
Have fun.
Have fun.
Nice. Towards Louis.
Again, I'm thinking, and it's tough because it again, it's very contextual. You know, what are you telling a U8 versus a U13 trying out for their first ECNL or MLS Next
Yeah.
club? You know,
Are you 13 ECNL? Let's go. Nothing.
I'd say, you know, you show up to that tryout and you need to individually impact the game. whatever position you're playing at, you got to individually impact the game so that the coach says that player stands out.
Yeah.
I'll be able to coach the team concepts.
Mm-hmm.
But if you already bring those individual characteristics, whether it be with the ball, without the ball, defensively, I think that's most important. Don't worry about the team. Worry about how could I stand out.
Nice one.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. Well, I think that's the end of the call. I do have a
Right.
training session in about half an hour. So,
I just texted
How far are
them.
you from here?
10 minutes. 1 sec.